How we doing, boys and girls, and welcome back to another episode of Dyson Sphere Program. Today we are going to expand. Now, as of last episode, we left it with some production of solar panels. We are going to need to really start filling out this main bus. Yes, I've been busily working away, filling some of the belts so that we've got a nice supply of materials so we can expand further today. One thing we're going to look at focusing on today is going to be oil, because oil is a crucial part for red science. We'll get to that momentarily, but let's see what we've got on the bus now. We've got our iron running along nicely, we've got copper, silicon, stone, graphite we've added to the bus. That's going to become important in a minute as well. We've got magnets on the bus, and we've even got steel, and we've got a little bit of crude oil starting to form on the bus as well, with a bit of space for expansion. So what I decided to do between episodes, did a little bit of work off camera. I thought it would be sensible, even though that we're making blue science or blue matrices over by our sort of make all area, it seemed to be sensible at least, because that's going to have a finite life to it. Eventually we'll delete that, get rid of it. So what I thought would be the sensible thing to do is make sure that we've got science on the bus as well. So I made this little design that is hopefully going to be nicely expandable if we need it to be. Now this is never going to need to run super fast. Even this little build as we see here. Some circuit boards, some what are these things called? I can never remember. Magnetic coils. Just one of each of these factories, even with these basic assembly machines, one is enough to produce 3 of these, or to comfortably keep 3 of these laboratories up and running at all times, which in essence works out to be, I think it's 1 science per second. What is blue nowadays? Yes, 3-second craft time with enough materials that you only need 1 circuit board and 1 magnetic coil every 3 seconds to produce one, which is really easy to achieve with just these. But we've got some room for expansion, and that's the key thing, and that's the advantage of a main bus. If you leave yourself plenty of space going backwards, you can always expand really far if you wish. So that's all done and dusted. But what are we looking at today? Well, we're going to look at red science. Red science we're going to get up and running. Red science requires you to introduce yourself to oil. You'll notice here that there is 2 ingredients to red science. There's two main ingredients, that's not a word. There's 2 ingredients to every single science, and the 2 here are going to be graphite and this sort of weird symbol, which we know to be hydrogen. Now, how do we get hydrogen? Hydrogen is going to be a byproduct of processing some crude oil. Where do we get crude oil from? We get it from the ground. If we take a fly over this way, I'm still not used to my little dude being so slow. We will see what I've done over here is I've placed down an oil extractor. You will find dotted around your planet the crude oil seeps, and each one will produce a certain amount of crude oil every second. Now the nice thing about this, as opposed to the other resources in this game, is crude oil is infinite. Regardless of what planet you start on, there'll be a whole bunch of these, and they'll infinitely provide. They'll never run out, but they'll always produce roughly the same amount. If you go to a map view, you can see crude oil is highlighted here, and there is a limit to how much the single planet can produce, 26.78 per second. Now, to give you guys a heads up, if you want to produce a factory that runs off, let's say it produces 1 science pack per second, which is a common goal for people nowadays, you're going to need to tap into every single drop of this oil on your home planet. And we're even going to go out of our way to where's our big gas giant friend? There he is, Hercules 1. This fellow over here is basically a big old ball of gas. If we zoom back out a little bit and highlight him, you'll see that you can actually collect both hydrogen and eventually a material known as deuterium from these gas giants. And this is where we're going to get the extra supply of gas from primarily. So we're going to be tapping into everything on our home planet, and then we're going to be converting it to a whole bunch of materials. There's the oil process is a fun one. Once you advance further into the game, you see weird things happening with it. If we look at what happens when you process the crude oil, you take crude oil, you put 1 material in being crude oil, and you get 2 materials out. You get 1 piece of hydrogen, you get 2 pieces of refined oil. Through various stages of the game, you will always find you have one you have more of one of these materials than you ever need. You start the game by never having enough hydrogen, because of course hydrogen goes into the red science, meaning that you don't really have many uses for that refined oil, and then it flips on its head completely. Eventually you end up with way too much hydrogen and you have got no idea what to do with it, and you start burning it all off as you tend to tap into more and more and more crude oil patches. But so for now, let's run some maths and let's see how these work. For the purpose of my game, when I'm running a bus-based factory, it's pretty simple. I just drop down one of these and I run the crude oil straight onto the bus. It means I can process the crude oil wherever it is I need. But let's go through an example of how you might set this up initially in a quick and easy way at the beginning of the game. So let's, for the sake of maths, let's assume that although this says 1.45 a second, let's just assume it's 2. 2 per second is kind of the maximum you're going to be able to get from a single node. That you may get like a tiny little bit more than that on a couple of them, but the majority of them sit between 1.3 to 2.1 maybe. But realistically, if you go by the assumption that you get 2 per second out of these, you can build a little factory pretty easily. So with that said, we're going to want to probably have, at this point in the game, probably want to have 4 refiners for every 2 crude oil. I know. So if you've got 2 per second coming out the ground, you're going to need 4 of these for every 2 per second that comes out. That basically is down to the fact that if you look at the recipe, 2 crude oil goes in, but it takes 4 seconds to craft. So if you put 2 in per second, you are going to need at least 4 factories to be able to extract it all. Now, the cool thing about this is that it outputs 2 different things. So you've got a couple of options on how to set this up. The common way and the easiest way is really just to run your crude oil straight in, because you've got 3 inputs on the front here. And then what you can choose to do is, assuming that you've got fast enough inserters, you can actually just run the output onto a second belt. And what I tend to do, now it's up to you whether you decide to do this, a common method that I have seen is to run 2 separate belts out the sides and then filter what comes out on each one. Now this is kind of cool, but it ends up with lots of inserters and lots of belts and lots of filtering, and doesn't really aid to help in much of a way. So what I tend to do is just run the crude oil straight in, use as fast as an inserter as you can, and output all of the produce onto a separate belt. At this point in the game, you are not going to saturate the belt, you will be absolutely fine. But when we're going to have both of the byproducts of this, both the hydrogen and the refined oil on a single belt, that's when we can just split it off and we can get our different materials out of it. At the end here, we can put a splitter. That's the one that goes up and down, there we go. We can put a regular splitter, and the easiest thing we can do from this then is go, right, we want one of the materials out that way, one of the materials out this way, and then we can do what we like with them. So if you highlight the splitter, let's make sure the belt is running in, you'll see you get the arrows. We want to say that, right, well, out that way we want to filter that to be hydrogen, and out that and basically what that will mean is that only the hydrogen will go out this way, and the other material, the refined oil, will pass straight through and go on this one here. So we've then split it out easily. You don't necessarily need to split it from every single one of these if you don't want to. So let's get the rest of these splitters in place. Let's give this a little bit of power. Now, it's not essential to double up the splitters, but you've got the space to do it, you might as well. Drop some power in there, give this some power. We're probably going to need to steal some power from further over here. Let's run a few power poles quickly. Now I'd have made this neat and tidy if I'd have thought about it, but maybe one there and then one there just to make the connection. Boom, there we go. So now we should have crude oil being tapped. Let's copy that recipe, paste it across a few times. and we'll see both hydrogen and light oil being extracted onto this one belt, and we're off. We have our crude oil being turned into something a little bit more useful. Now for me, I'm going to put both of these on the belt, but what you'll probably want to do is tank some of these up. The best thing to use is the storage tanks. These are much better for storing liquids. You can technically, because these do stack like any other regular item, put them in storage boxes, but you're going to find that both hydrogen and light oil, or refined oil, sorry, they only stack to 20. Meaning that you're going to fill your inventory pretty quickly, whereas the storage tank can hold up to 10,000. So drop some storage tanks down, make some storage here. What I might do is, if I had any glass, I'd make a couple. Be right back. Okay, so a couple of storage tanks later. Of course it's going to collide with another item. Always the case. Let's move this across just a little bit then. Yeah, let's move this across just a little bit. Oh, it's colliding with the power pole, of course it is. It's not my day. There we go, one there, lovely stuff. Run that in, and boom, we're off to the races. We've got our oil. Now, the second component, well, that's hydrogen sorted. We've got our hydrogen for our red science. The other component we need is graphite. Luckily, graphite's the easy one. Graphite's much more simplistic as it just comes from coal, and we've already made graphite. We're actually running our power plant off graphite. But what I decided to do to make sure that there was plenty of graphite on the bus and it wasn't all going straight into our power plant was just to set up this little section again, tapping a little bit of coal, pumping it through, getting a whole bunch of graphite out. Eventually we're going to need a lot more than this in terms of smelting anyway, but this will be more than enough to supply us for some red science. Get it on the bus or get yourself a lane ready and waiting, and then science can be up and running in no time. Now with our graphite on the bus and our hydrogen now on the bus, there's not much else to do for red science but to actually make it. So let's bring in a couple of belts of materials. Let's give ourselves probably a half a square's worth of space between the two. I've made myself a couple more science labs. So if we're going to have, let's say, the hydrogen coming in on one belt, the graphite coming in on another belt, and we can stack these up. Now we don't want this to be blue science, we want this to be red science or energy matrix. And now the cast time on this, or the crafting time, sorry, is 6 seconds. So if we want to keep to this 1 per second sort of ratio, we're going to need 6 of these laboratories. Eventually you can actually stack all 6 on top of each other, but I haven't actually researched. You're not able to research far enough ahead to be able to do that. Eventually I think you can stack these all the way up to like 12 or something ridiculously high, but we're not quite that not that advanced yet. So let's get those in place. Let's put some, we might as well use the fast inserters given the chance. We're going to need some power. There we go, power either side, and we're going to need an output. Slap this one down. There it goes. We'll run that off to the north. Eventually, what my plan is I haven't got this set up in it right now, but my plan eventually is to run every time we make a science. So we're going to make the blue and the red here. We're going to run them north, and we're going to run them all the way to the North Pole. That basically means that any time we produce a science, say for example we need a few intermediate products to be made next, but say for example we make the next science, which is yellow science over here, the same thing applies. We just run it north, and eventually they'll all end up at the North Pole, and it's the North Pole where we'll probably have our little research facility on the go, and we'll make it look nice and pretty. But for now I've just built a, let's just call it a slightly temporary research facility up here. So let's finish getting this up and running. Outputs, and now we've got the fun stuff, getting it in off the bus. So we've got hydrogen and graphite. I think they need equal quantities, 2 hydrogen, 2 graphite, so it doesn't really matter which ones come in first. We're going to have graphite is here, so we're going to run our belt in something like such. You need to take a split off this belt. Drop a splitter down. Connect it back up. Out and onto the belt. There we go. So there we've got our graphite. Now we just need the hydrogen. Hydrogen should be all the way back here. Way back here. What we're going to do is get our belt in place to begin with. Make sure we get it the right height. I love the fact that the game is 3D, but sometimes it gets really difficult to see exactly where your mouse pointer is. To here and then down. Boom. Although that's not uniform with all of those, but whatever. Hey ho. We're going to need some landfill. We're going to need some landfill. No decoration on this. Just boop. Job's good. And hydrogen is here. Now I wish you could run the transport belt backwards whilst also at the same time getting it in the right direction. Nope, that's we need to go up. There we go. Grab our splitter. Just stick it there. It doesn't actually have to be exactly. There we go. Hydrogen. In it comes. This is the fun bit when you get it all connected up and you start to see your factory work. Now hopefully we've got everything set up and we should have red science on the go. We should start seeing these light up. Yes, lovely stuff. Once these ones are full, take a second, but once these ones are full, then we'll pass them upstairs and eventually we should have all 6 of these illuminated. Lovely. Let's run this up this way. You can go in there. Go little robots, go. And now we can finally start doing some more research. We'd got to the point where we'd actually capped out on research. There's technically nothing left in the game that needs just blue science for me to research, which is why we've not had anything on the go for a while. Now with red science on the go as well, we can take a little look as to what we might start wanting to learn next. Now, there's a couple of cool things you can get with red science. Firstly, if you really wish to, you can basically zerg straight towards these planetary logistics stations. Now, it's going to require a fair amount of them because you're going to have to go through this one first, but we're going to want to unlock this one relatively quickly anyway, considering that it gives us Mark III sorters. Mark III sorters are a godsend. These basically counteract any of the issues that we're going to have with speed of getting things off a belt and into a factory. Mark III sorters become really handy, and they're not too expensive. They do require an electromagnetic engine, but we're going to be making those before long anyway. But once we've got through that one, we're going to be looking at logistics. Now, these planetary logistics stations are super powerful. The meta seems to be in the game right now is just to dump one of these down, request some materials in, craft whatever it is you need, and then put the finished product back into the logistics station and let these little drones zip about and collect everything. Now, like I said, for the most part, this playthrough, I'm trying to do it without as many logistics systems. If you've been watching my live stream recently, you'll know that we've gone pretty heavy on the logistics, and it just ends up looking really messy. It's difficult to make it look neat and tidy, and it's hard to find out where your bottlenecks truly are because you've just got thousands of robots flying around. It kind of looks cool, but it does suck out a lot of the fun of the game. So for this playthrough, I'm going to try and avoid using logistics unless it's absolutely necessary, but that's a good one to go for initially. You're going to want to, basically anything that's in this row here, you're going to get pretty quickly. You could also look at getting some upgrades. Personal upgrades at this point can be really handy. Getting your mech to just move faster is a godsend because he's so slow at this point in time. And there's another one that you might want to pick up, which is actually the flight. Now, is it in here or is it... Where's the one that gives you the ability to... There's one that gives you the ability to fly. Is it Drive Engine 2? This unlocks the mecha sail. Yes, this is the one. This is the one that you want to start heading towards. This is going to give you the mecha sail, which is gives you the ability to zoom off at a much greater speed. You'll all of a sudden be able to get all the way around your planet super quickly. Mecha core level 2 needed for that one. So you want to dive into this one. This is going to be pretty quick and easy. We're going to get this one first. Being able to move around fast is a huge bonus. With that one in place, we can then pick up Drive Engine 2. This is not going to take more than a couple of minutes to produce. 200 of each is virtually nothing. Technology-wise, after that, we'll probably want to pick up a few. Before we get to yellow science, we basically set ourselves up. We're going to expand on our oil. We're going to start generating something that you're going to need in huge quantities, graphene. We're going to get some proper builds on the go for those. And we're at the point where we're going to start going to other planets and harvesting their resources. If we take a look out, zoom out, we've already worked out that we don't have silicon on our home planet, but our close friend Hercules has all of the silicon and a lot of it. So we're likely going to tap into Hercules 3 to get our silicon. Hercules 4 is the one that's got all our titanium on it. We're going to be making a trip over there before too long, stealing all of the titanium ore, bringing it back to our home planet for us to craft into titanium bars. And that's going to go on our bus. That's going to be, you'll see right now that we're missing an item very early on in our bus. The first thing that we're missing, we've got iron, we've got copper, and then we've got the silicon, and eventually is going to be the titanium on there. So there we go. There's red science up and running. It's looking good. So finally for this episode, if you're anything like me, once you unlock a new science, you get very impatient. You just want all of it as quick as possible, which is totally normal and totally understandable. Especially the upgrades. These are the quality of life things that I like to get my hands on basically as soon as I can. So I decided to do a bit of doubling. Doubling is something that you tend to do occasionally when you're impatient. So I doubled the production of blue science, I doubled the production of red science. Luckily at this point in the game you can double everything without much concern. Literally the only thing I really needed to do is place down a few more labs, and although it's not entirely necessary, I bolstered our supply of the magnetic coils and the circuits here. What I do need to still finish is refining a little bit more of our crude oil into hydrogen, just so the red science can actually produce at a reasonable speed. We're still slightly lacking in hydrogen, but yes, I decided to do some doubling so I can get some a good amount of technology kicked off before next episode. So talking in next episode, what are we going to do next episode? Well, the first thing we're going to need to do, with some seriously high priority, is work out what to do with all of this goddamn refined oil. Now, it's going to back up as it stands right now. If we take a quick zoom over to our mini power plant, that was the sail, by the way. That shows just how quick it is. We can see that we're already obviously churning through all of the hydrogen that we can produce, but for every one piece of hydrogen we're producing 2 pieces of refined oil. So it's not going to be too long before this is stacked up to the moon, and we're going to need to find some serious usage for it. This is going to be going into an item called graphene. We're going to be turning some of this into sulfuric acid, and we're going to be turning some of this into plastics. Those are things on the cards for next episode. We're going to be taking this basic oil build and we're going to be expanding it to a point where it's going to produce way more materials for us, and hopefully balance out some of the usage for these items we get from the crude oil. But boys and girls, I'll leave it there for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you're liking this little series, please remember to hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.